fundamental question about inflation. We're looking at different types: cost push, demand pull, reflation, and disinflation. The question asks, what do we call the process of curbing inflation by reducing the money supply? It's a key concept that helps us understand how monetary policy tackles rising prices. Disinflation happens when we slow down the rate of inflation. Basically, prices are still rising, but not as fast as before. It's often achieved by tightening the money supply, which means less money is circulating in the economy. This helps cool things off without causing prices to drop outright. So, disinflation is about managing inflation carefully, not eliminating it completely. It's a key tool for keeping the economy stable. Let's take a closer look at how Indian agriculture is typically described. We're comparing 4 different scenarios: economies where land and labor vary between being scarce or surplus. Is it a land scarce, labor scarce economy? Or maybe land scarce, labor surplus? What about land surplus combined with labor surplus or labor scarcity? Understanding this helps us grasp the fundamental challenges and dynamics that shape agricultural practices in India today. India faces a unique challenge. There's not enough land to go around, but plenty of people ready to work in agriculture. This means it's a land-scarce, labor-surplus economy. Understanding this helps us see why farming practices and policies need to focus on making the most of limited land while supporting a large workforce. It's a key piece of the puzzle in India's agricultural story. Let's take a moment to focus on price theory. It's a key concept in economics, but it goes by another name too. You might hear it called microeconomics, public economics, development economics, or macroeconomics. Which one fits best? This question helps us zero in on how prices shape individual choices and markets, rather than the economy as a whole. It's a fundamental building block for understanding economic behavior at a smaller scale. Microeconomics focuses on the small scale, individual consumers, firms, and their decisions. It's where prices first come into play, shaped by these units before they ripple out to the bigger economy. Understanding this helps us see how everyday choices build up to larger economic trends. So, when we talk about price setting at the ground level, we're really diving into microeconomics. Let's look at the main sectors that make up India's national income. We've got agriculture, industry, and services, plus a combined category of agriculture and industry together. The question here is simple: which one contributes the highest percentage share? Understanding this helps us see where the economy's strength really lies and how different sectors drive growth and development. It's a key piece of the bigger picture we're exploring. When we look at India's economy, the service sector, also called the tertiary sector, is now the biggest revenue generator. It outpaces both agriculture, which is the primary sector, and industry, the secondary sector. This shift shows how much India's economy has evolved, with services like finance, and tourism leading the way. So, when asked which sector brings in the most revenue, the clear answer is services. Let's look at how agricultural products are graded and standardized in India. This process is managed by several key organizations: the Food Corporation of India, the Directorate of Marketing and Inspection, the Indian Standard Institution, and the Central Statistical Organization all play roles. But when it comes specifically to grading and standardization, one of these takes the lead. Understanding which organization handles this helps us grasp how quality and consistency are maintained in the agricultural sector. The Directorate of Marketing and Inspection, or DMI, was established back in 1935. Its main role is to set standards and grades for agricultural products. Why? To protect farmers' interests. By ensuring quality and consistency, the DMI helps farmers get a fair deal in the marketplace. It's a key part of how agricultural trade stays organized and trustworthy. Let's look at a key economic question. When there's too much money chasing too few goods, what do we call that? Is it deflation, inflation, recession, or stagflation? The answer is inflation. That's when prices rise because demand outpaces supply. It's a fundamental concept that helps us understand price changes in the economy. Inflation happens when people are willing to spend more money, but there just isn't enough goods to go around. It's a simple idea: demand outpaces supply, and prices rise. That's what we mean when we say inflation. It's not just about prices going up randomly, it's about the balance between what buyers want and what sellers can provide. Understanding this helps us see why inflation matters in everyday life. Let's look at what's behind the rapid growth of Indian exports. Is it the imposition of import duties, liberalization of the economy, recession in other countries, or diversification of exports? Each of these factors plays a role in shaping trade, but one stands out as a key driver. Understanding this helps us see how policy and global conditions come together to boost a country's presence in international markets. We're seeing a sudden, rapid growth in Indian exports. The main reason behind this surge is the diversification of what's being exported. Instead of relying on just a few products, India has broadened its range, tapping into new markets and industries. This variety helps stabilize growth and opens up fresh opportunities. So, the key driver here is diversification, expanding the types of goods sent abroad. Let's break down what we mean by cheap money. It's often linked to a low rate of interest. That's the cost of borrowing being really affordable. But it also ties into a low level of savings, meaning people aren't putting much aside. Then, there's a low level of income, which limits how much money flows through the economy. Finally, a low standard of living can be part of the picture. Together, these factors help us understand the full story behind cheap money. Cheap money means borrowing costs are really low. Loans come with low interest rates. When money is cheap like this, it's easier for businesses and individuals to borrow and spend. That can boost the economy, but it can also lead to risks if borrowing gets out of control. So when you hear cheap money, think low rates of interest. That's the key idea. Let's think about how saving habits differ between the rich and the poor. When we compare their incomes, does the poor save a larger part, an equal part, or a smaller part of what they earn? Or maybe they save all of it. This question helps us explore the relationship between income level and saving behavior, which is key to understanding economic choices and financial stability. When people have a low base income, they usually can't save much from what they earn. It's not just about wanting to save. The reality is, there's less left over after covering basic needs. So, the portion they manage to put aside is often much smaller compared to those with higher incomes. This slide highlights that challenge clearly. Let's test our knowledge with a quick question. The Kisan Credit Card Scheme, when was it introduced? Was it 1991, 1996, 1998, or 2000? Think about the timeline of agricultural reforms and credit access in India. This question helps us anchor the KCC's origin in the right historical context before we dive deeper. Take a moment to consider your answer. Let's take a moment to look at the KCC scheme. It was introduced back in 1998, following the recommendations made by the R.V. Gupta Committee. This initiative marked an important step, setting the stage for what came next. Remember, the correct year here is 1998, a key date in understanding the timeline of these developments. Now, let's focus on the organizations involved in the Kisan Credit Card Scheme. The question asks which one prepared the report for this initiative. The options include the Ministry of Finance, SBI, NABARD, and the RBI. Each plays a distinct role in India's financial ecosystem, but only one took the lead in preparing this specific report. Understanding who that is helps us grasp the scheme's foundation and oversight. NABARD, or the National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, played a key role early on by preparing the initial scheme report for the Kisan Credit Card, or KCC. This step was crucial because it laid the groundwork for how the program would support farmers with timely credit. Understanding NABARD's involvement helps us see how institutional support shapes rural development initiatives. So, when we talk about the origins of KCC, NABARD is at the center of that story. Let's talk about Ways and Means Advances, or WMA. The question here is, who does the Government of India take these advances from? The options include RBI, IDBI, SBI, and ICICI. The key point is, WMAs are short-term loans to help the government manage its cash flow. And the institution that provides this facility is the Reserve Bank of India, the RBI. It's a crucial part of how the government keeps its finances running smoothly between receipts and expenditures. Both the central and state governments sometimes need short-term funds to manage their cash flow. When that happens, they turn to the Reserve Bank of India for temporary loans called ways and means advances. These advances help bridge gaps in government finances, ensuring smooth operations without delay. It's a crucial mechanism that keeps the wheels of governance turning, even when revenues don't quite line up with expenses. Let's look at where NABARD plays its biggest role. It's closely tied to sectors that drive rural and agricultural development. While heavy industries and banking are important, NABARD's primary focus is on agriculture and rural areas. That's where it channels its efforts to support farmers, improve infrastructure, and boost overall rural livelihoods. So, the agriculture sector and rural areas are really at the heart of what NABARD does. The National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, just by its name, makes clear where its focus lies. It's all about supporting the agriculture sector and the rural areas that depend on it. This isn't a general bank. It's specialized, aiming to boost farming communities and rural development in a targeted way. Understanding this focus helps us see why its programs and policies are designed the way they are. Let's look at a common banking term. When a customer is allowed to write checks for more than what's in their account, what do we call that? Is it a personal loan, an ordinary loan, discounting a bill of exchange, or an overdraft? The answer here is an overdraft. It's a short-term facility that lets you temporarily go beyond your balance without bouncing a check. This concept is key to understanding everyday banking flexibility. An overdraft facility lets current account holders with strong credit pull out money even when their balance hits zero or isn't enough. It's like a safety net, giving you access to extra funds when you need them most. This option helps manage short-term cash flow without the hassle of applying for a separate loan every time. In this case, the correct answer is an overdraft. Let's take a moment to think about taxes and who collects them. We have income tax, custom duty, professional tax, and excise duty. Now, the question is, which one of these is not collected by the central government? It's a good way to test our understanding of how tax systems are divided between central and local authorities. Keep this in mind as we explore the roles different governments play in taxation. Professional tax is a charge collected by state governments, targeting individuals in certain professions, like doctors, lawyers, or chartered accountants. It's a way for states to generate revenue from those practicing specific trades or services. In this case, the correct answer points directly to professional tax, highlighting its role as a state-level levy on professionals. It's an important distinction from other types of taxes that might apply more broadly. Let's talk about how the supply of agricultural products behaves. Is it elastic, inelastic, or somewhere in between? Elastic supply means producers can quickly increase output when prices rise. Inelastic supply means output doesn't change much, no matter the price. Agricultural products often have unique challenges, like growing seasons and weather, that affect how flexible supply can be. So understanding this helps us predict how farmers and markets respond to price changes. When we talk about agricultural supply being inelastic, it means that the amount produced doesn't change much, even if prices go up or down. Farmers can't quickly adjust how much they grow because of factors like growing seasons and land limits. So even when prices shift, demand stays pretty steady. It doesn't swing wildly. That's why the correct answer here is inelastic. Let's take a moment to focus on the term laissez-faire. It's closely linked to one specific type of economy, the capitalist economy. This idea promotes minimal government interference in business and markets. It's about letting the economy operate freely, driven by individual choices and competition. So when you hear laissez-faire, think capitalist economy, where the market largely regulates itself. Laissez-faire describes a system where the market operates freely, without government interference. It's a hallmark of capitalist economies, where supply and demand set the rules. This approach trusts that businesses and consumers, left to their own devices, will find the best outcomes through competition and choice. So, when you hear laissez-faire, think of a hands-off government and a market that's allowed to run its course. Let's look at how the marginal product behaves when the total product is rising at an increasing rate. When TP goes up faster and faster, what happens to MP? Is it constant, falling, rising, or zero? Think of marginal product as the extra output from one more unit of input. If total output is accelerating, then MP must be rising. It's adding more each time. This question helps us connect those concepts clearly. When total product is growing faster and faster, it means each new unit of input is actually producing more output than the one before. In other words, the marginal product is rising. So, as long as total product accelerates, the additional output per input keeps going up. This is why the correct answer here is B, rising. It shows how efficiency improves with each added unit, at least for this stage of production. When we talk about small-scale industry, or SSI, in India, its definition hinges on a few key factors. These include sales by the unit, investment in machines and equipment, market coverage, and export capacity. Each of these elements helps determine whether a business qualifies as an SSI. Understanding these criteria is important because they shape policy decisions and support mechanisms tailored for small industries across the country. When we talk about small-scale industries, the key factor is the level of investment in machinery. Specifically, these industries usually invest less than 1 crore in machines and equipment. This classification helps distinguish them from larger operations, which require much higher capital. So the defining feature here is the amount spent on machinery. That's what sets small-scale industries apart. Let's talk about economies of scale. This concept is all about how costs change as production or distribution grows. Specifically, it refers to the reduction in either unit costs or total costs. The key question here is whether economies of scale reduce the total cost of production, the total cost of distribution, or the unit costs of either. Understanding this helps businesses figure out how to grow efficiently and lower expenses per unit as they scale up. Let's talk about economies of scale. This happens when making more of something actually lowers the cost for each individual unit. In other words, as production ramps up, the price to produce one item goes down. It's a key concept in business and manufacturing, helping companies become more efficient and competitive. So when we hear economies of scale, think about shrinking costs as output grows. That's the core idea behind this term. Let's break down what free trade really means. At its core, it's about moving goods and services across borders without barriers. That means no duties or tariffs, no extra costs added just because something crosses a line. It's unrestricted exchange, letting countries buy and sell freely. So free trade isn't just about moving goods, but doing so without added costs or limits. This slide asks us to pinpoint that exact idea. Free trade means goods can move freely across borders, without tariffs or barriers getting in the way. It's about the smooth flow of products from one country to another, making markets more open and competitive. This slide highlights that core idea: free movement of goods is what really defines free trade. It's a simple concept, but it's the foundation for global commerce as we know it. Let's talk about a key concept in decision-making: costs that impact our choices differently. This question asks, what do we call an expenditure that's already been made and can't be recovered? It's important to distinguish between types of costs. Variable costs change with activity. Opportunity costs are what we give up. Sunk costs are those past expenses we can't get back. And operational costs are ongoing expenses to keep things running. The answer here is sunk cost. Money spent that's gone for good. Sunk costs are expenses that have already been spent and can't be recovered. They're part of the past, money or resources invested that won't come back, no matter what decisions we make next. Understanding sunk costs helps us avoid the trap of throwing good resources after bad by focusing on future value instead of what's already gone. This slide highlights that important concept. Let's talk about purchasing power parity, or PPP. This theory is all about comparing the value of currencies across countries. So, which rate does it relate to? Is it the interest rate, bank rate, wage rate, or exchange rate? The answer is the exchange rate. PPP helps explain how exchange rates adjust to equalize the purchasing power of different currencies. It's a key concept in understanding international economics and currency valuation. Let's talk about purchasing power parity, or PPP theory. It helps us compare different currencies by looking at what they can actually buy, the same basket of goods, no matter where you are. This way, we get a fair sense of their true value. And when we use PPP, we're really trying to understand and equalize exchange rates between currencies. So it's all about making sure $1 or euro goes just as far as another. Let's look at a key question in economics. What do we call knowledge, technical skill, and education? These aren't just random assets. They're part of what economists call human capital. It's the value people bring through their expertise and learning. This concept helps us understand how investing in education and skills can drive growth and productivity. So, when you hear about human capital, think of the knowledge and abilities that power the economy. We're talking about intellectual assets, the unique skills, knowledge, and experience each person brings to the table. These aren't just random traits, they're what we call human capital. It's the value people add through their expertise and creativity. Understanding this helps us see why investing in people is so crucial for any organization or community. Human capital is really the foundation of growth and innovation. When we think about what makes an entrepreneur truly essential, several functions come to mind. Is it supervision, management, marketing, or risk-bearing? Each plays a role, but one stands out as the core of entrepreneurship, the willingness to take on risk. Entrepreneurs step into the unknown, making bold decisions without guarantees. That risk-bearing drives innovation and growth. So, while all these functions matter, risk-bearing is often the heartbeat of entrepreneurship. At the heart of entrepreneurship lies something crucial, the ability and willingness to bear risk. While many roles and skills matter, it's this readiness to face uncertainty head-on that truly sets entrepreneurs apart in the economy. They don't just manage or plan, they step into the unknown, betting on their vision and ideas. This risk-bearing mindset drives innovation and growth, making it the defining feature of entrepreneurial success. Let's break down how money flows through the banking system. First, commercial banks receive deposits from the public. That's where it all begins. Then, these banks grant loans to their customers, fueling spending and investment. The central bank steps in by giving loans to commercial banks when needed. Meanwhile, the government floats its own loans to raise funds. Now, the bank rate, that's the interest rate at which the central bank lends to commercial banks. It's a key tool in controlling the economy. Let's talk about the bank rate. This is the interest rate the Reserve Bank of India charges when it lends money to commercial banks. Think of it as the cost of borrowing for banks themselves. When the RBI adjusts this rate, it influences how much banks charge their customers. So, the bank rate directly affects lending across the economy, making it a key tool for monetary policy. In short, it's the rate at which the central bank loans money to commercial banks. Let's talk about goods that are scarce and limited in supply. What do we call them? They're not just any goods, they have a specific name. These are economic goods. Unlike free goods, economic goods come with a cost because they're limited. Understanding this helps us see why resources have value and why choices matter in economics. So, when something is scarce and in limited supply, it's an economic good. Economic goods are things that aren't unlimited. They have some scarcity compared to how much people want them. That scarcity is what gives them value. When supply can't fully meet demand, the good becomes economic. This idea helps us understand why some things cost money, while others, like air, usually don't. So, when we talk about economic goods, we're focusing on items or services that have value because they're limited in some way. When we talk about measuring economic development, there are several options on the table. GDP, or gross domestic product, is one common choice. It tells us the total value of goods and services produced. Disposable income looks at what people actually have to spend after taxes. NNP, net national product, adjusts GDP by accounting for depreciation. And per capita income breaks things down per person, giving us insight into individual prosperity. So, which one gives us the clearest picture of development? Let's explore that. Let's focus on per capita income. This measure gives us a clearer picture of individual economic well-being and growth. Instead of looking at the economy as a whole, it breaks things down per person. That way, we can understand how wealth is actually experienced by individuals, not just averaged across a country. It's a more precise way to track real progress in living standards. Let's talk about different types of currency, especially in a foreign exchange context. The question here asks, what do we call foreign currency that tends to move quickly between markets? The options include scarce currency, soft currency, gold currency, and hot currency. The key idea is the speed and ease with which this currency migrates. We're focusing on the term that captures this rapid movement. It's often called hot currency. Hot currency is all about speed. It's money that moves rapidly between financial markets, chasing the best interest rates available. Investors shift these funds quickly to maximize returns, reacting to changing conditions almost in real time. This kind of movement can influence exchange rates and market stability, making hot currency a key concept in global finance. Understanding it helps us see how money flows across borders and impacts economies worldwide. Let's talk about disguised unemployment, a hidden challenge where more people are employed than actually needed. In India, this issue is most common in the agriculture sector. Many workers are involved, but not all contribute productively. This leads to underemployment, where people could be doing more, but aren't. Understanding where this happens helps us focus efforts on improving productivity and livelihoods. So, the agriculture sector is where disguised unemployment shows up most clearly. In agriculture, it's common to see more people working on a task than actually needed. This means that some workers don't add any extra output. Their marginal productivity is zero. It's an important concept because it highlights inefficiencies in labor allocation, especially in the agriculture sector. Understanding this helps us see where improvements can be made to boost productivity and make better use of available resources. Let's talk about the demand curve for a given good. Unlike typical goods, a given good defies the usual law of demand. Instead of sloping downward, its demand curve actually rises as the price increases. So, the correct answer here is that the demand curve is upward rising. This unusual behavior happens because the income effect outweighs the substitution effect, making higher prices lead to higher demand. It's a fascinating exception in economics. Let's talk about given goods, a curious case in economics. These are inferior goods where, counterintuitively, demand actually rises as the price goes up. That means the demand curve slopes upward, not downward like we usually expect. It's a rare phenomenon, but it challenges the basic idea that higher prices always push people away. Instead, for given goods, higher prices can lead to more buying. This slide highlights that key point clearly. Let's take a moment to think about a famous economic idea, the notion that supply creates its own demand. This concept is often linked to a few key thinkers. Among them, Adam Smith, J.B. Say, David Ricardo, and Marshall. The question here is, who originally stated this idea? It's a classic debate that helps us understand how markets and economies function. Keep this in mind as we explore the foundations of economic theory. Let's take a moment to focus on a key idea known as Say's law of markets. This principle is named after J.B. Say, an influential economist. Say's law suggests that supply creates its own demand, meaning that production is the source of consumption. Understanding this helps us grasp how markets balance themselves over time. So, when we talk about Say's law, we're really talking about the role of producers in driving economic activity. Engel's law explores how the quantity demanded of a good changes as a consumer's income changes. It's about the link between income and demand, not just price, tastes, or substitutes. So, when we talk about Engel's law, we're focusing on how people adjust what they buy when their income goes up or down. This idea helps us understand spending patterns as incomes shift over time. Engel's law tells us something interesting about how people spend their money. As income goes up, the share of that income spent on food actually goes down. Instead, people tend to spend more on luxury items. This idea helps us understand the relationship between how much people earn and what they choose to buy. It's a key concept when we look at consumer behavior, especially how quantity demanded changes with income. Let's look at a question about India's balance of payments, or BOP. We're asked to identify which item is not part of the current account. The options are short-term commercial borrowing, non-monetary gold movement, investment income, and transfer payment. Understanding what belongs in the current account helps us grasp how a country tracks trade and income flows with the rest of the world. This question tests that key distinction. When we look at the balance of payments current account, it's all about tracking financial transactions, expenditures, and revenues between countries. But there's one key thing it doesn't include: non-monetary gold movements. That means any gold that isn't used as money, like gold held for trade or industry, isn't counted here. This distinction helps keep the account focused on actual financial flows, making it clearer where money is moving in and out. Let's take a closer look at the capital output ratio. What exactly does it measure? Is it the per unit cost of production, or maybe the amount of capital invested per unit of output? Could it be the ratio of depreciation to output, or perhaps working capital employed? The key idea here is understanding how much capital is needed to produce a certain amount of output. That's what the capital output ratio tells us. It's a crucial metric for assessing efficiency in production. This ratio tells us how much capital we need to invest to produce just one unit of output. In other words, it measures the amount of capital invested for each unit we create. Understanding this helps us see how efficiently resources are being used in production, a key insight when making investment decisions or improving processes. So, when we talk about this ratio, we're really focusing on capital intensity per unit of output. When we talk about national income, we're really measuring the total value of everything produced in a country. So, what's the best way to express that? Is it by time, money, volume, or weight? The answer is money, because national income sums up goods and services in terms of their market value. That way, we get a clear picture of economic activity, regardless of the physical size or quantity of what's produced. It's all about the value, not the volume or weight. When we measure national income, we only count goods and services that have a clear monetary value. In other words, if something can't be priced in money, it doesn't make the cut. This ensures we're comparing apples to apples. Everything included has a dollar amount attached. So, money is the common thread that ties all these economic activities together in the national income accounts. Let's take a moment to clarify what ECS means in banking transactions. It could stand for a few different things, but here we have 4 options: electronic clearing service, exchange clearing standard, extra cash status, and excess credit supervisor. Out of these, the one that's most commonly used in banking is electronic clearing service, a system that helps move money electronically between accounts. This question helps us understand key banking terms and their practical uses. ECS stands for Electronic Clearing Service. It's the system banks use to move money electronically from one account to another. Think of it as a digital handshake between banks, making fund transfers smooth and efficient. This method helps avoid paper checks and speeds up payments, especially for recurring transactions like bills or salaries. It's a key part of how our financial system stays connected and reliable. When we classify industries as agro-based or mineral-based, we look at a few key factors. First, the size of the industry, how big or small it is. Then, who owns it, the ownership structure. Next, the raw materials they use, whether they come from agriculture or minerals. And finally, the output, what products they actually produce. Together, these criteria help us understand where an industry fits in the bigger picture. This slide focuses on how the industry classifies its sources of primary raw materials. Essentially, it's about understanding where the essential building blocks come from. These classifications help us track the origins of raw materials, the foundation of production. Knowing this lets us see the bigger picture of supply chains and resource management. It's a key step in grasping how industries operate from the ground up. Here, we're looking at a question about pricing strategies in international trade. The key idea is selling goods in a foreign market for less than what they cost at home. The options given, pumping, humping, dumping, and slumping, each sound similar, but only one fits this practice. The correct term is dumping, which is when companies sell products abroad at a lower price to gain market share or undercut local competitors. It's a common but controversial tactic in global business. Dumping happens when a producer sells a product abroad for less than what they charge at home. It's a strategy used in international trade to gain market share or undercut competitors. While it might seem like a bargain for buyers, dumping can distort markets and lead to unfair competition. Understanding this concept helps us see how pricing strategies impact global trade dynamics. Let's talk about bank deposits that you can access anytime, without giving advance notice. These are known as demand deposits. Unlike fixed or variable deposits, demand deposits let you withdraw your money whenever you want. They're the most liquid form of bank deposit, giving you flexibility and immediate access. So, when you hear about deposits that don't require notice before withdrawal, think demand deposits. Demand deposits are the kind of money you can access whenever you need it, like what's in your savings account or what you can withdraw from an ATM. There's no need to give any notice before taking the money out. It's ready and waiting, on demand. This flexibility is what sets demand deposits apart from other types of accounts that might have restrictions or require advance notice. When we talk about markets for securities, it's important to know where new capital actually comes in. New capital issues, that means newly issued stocks or bonds, are placed in the primary market. This is where companies raise fresh funds directly from investors. The secondary market, by contrast, is where those securities are traded afterward. Gray and black markets operate outside official channels, so the key takeaway here is that new capital enters through the primary market. Let's talk about the primary market, sometimes called the new issue market. This is where shares are sold for the very first time, fresh, brand new stock entering the market. It's the starting point for investors to buy directly from the company before those shares begin trading publicly. Understanding this helps us see how companies raise capital and how investors get in early. So when you hear primary market, think first-hand, original shares. Let's break down the idea of prime cost. It's a key concept in cost accounting, helping us understand the direct expenses involved in producing goods. The question here asks us to identify what prime cost equals. Is it just fixed cost, variable cost, or a combination of variable cost with fixed or administrative costs? We'll explore these options to clarify what prime cost really includes. Let's talk about prime costs. These are the direct expenses a company faces, things like labor and raw materials. They're called prime costs because they vary directly with production levels. So, when we consider prime costs, we're really looking at variable costs only. That's why the correct answer here is option C. Understanding this helps us see how costs behave as output changes. Let's look at different types of taxes and how they relate to income levels. When the tax rate goes up as income rises, that's called a progressive tax. It means people who earn more pay a higher percentage. This is different from proportional tax, where everyone pays the same rate, or lump sum tax, which is a fixed amount regardless of income. Regressive tax, on the other hand, hits lower incomes harder. Here, the focus is on identifying which tax increases with income. The answer is progressive tax. Let's talk about progressive tax systems. Here, the tax rate goes up as a person earns more income. So the more you make, the higher percentage you pay in taxes. This approach aims to balance fairness, ensuring those with greater ability to pay contribute more. It's a key concept in many tax policies around the world, designed to reduce income inequality while funding public services. When we talk about capital formation in an economy, we're really asking what drives the buildup of assets and investments. Is it total income, total demand, total savings, or total production? Each of these plays a role, but capital formation depends most directly on total savings, because savings provide the funds needed for investment. Without savings, there's no capital to put into new projects or infrastructure. So, understanding this connection helps us see how economies grow and develop over time. Capital doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's created when people and organizations decide to save money instead of spending it all. Those savings then become the pool of resources we call total savings. It's this total savings that forms the foundation for building capital, the fuel for investment, growth, and progress in any economy. Without saving, there's no capital to invest. When we talk about the industrial exit policy, we're really asking about the rights an industrial unit has when it decides to change course. Does it mean moving to a new location, shifting its product line, hiring foreign workers, or maybe shutting down completely? This policy defines how a business can exit or transform its operations within the industrial landscape. Understanding these options helps us see how industries adapt or conclude their activities responsibly. This policy gives an industrial unit the option to step away from an industry entirely. It lets them shut down operations if needed. In other words, it's about closing down, a full exit rather than just scaling back or pausing. This choice can be crucial when continuing isn't viable or sustainable. Let's look at what shapes the supply of labor. We know factors like the size and age structure of the population play a role. So does the nature of work itself and how productive labor is at the margin. But one of these options doesn't actually determine labor supply. This question challenges us to spot which factor doesn't belong, sharpening our understanding of what truly influences the workforce. When we talk about productivity, it's usually something we measure after someone's already been hired. It's a way to see how much value each worker adds. But here, the key point, productivity doesn't decide how many workers are available in the first place. That initial supply depends on other factors. So, when we think about labor markets, productivity comes into play a bit later, not right at the start. This distinction helps us understand why marginal productivity of labor is the correct focus after hearing. Let's think about what happens when the price of tea falls. How does that affect the demand for coffee? If tea gets cheaper, people might choose it over coffee more often. So the demand for coffee is likely to fall. It's a classic example of how two products can be substitutes. When one becomes more affordable, the other's demand usually drops. This question helps us understand those basic market relationships. Tea and coffee are perfect substitutes, which means they can easily replace each other in consumption. So, if the price of tea drops, people will naturally switch from coffee to tea. This shift causes the demand for coffee to fall. It's a simple but powerful example of how changes in one market can directly affect another, especially when products serve the same purpose for consumers. Let's look at a classic question in economics. How do we classify seawater and fresh air? These are goods everyone uses, but they don't fit the usual categories like normal or inferior goods. Instead, they're considered free goods. That means they're abundant and available without cost, unlike giffen goods or inferior goods, which relate to changes in demand based on price or income. So, seawater and fresh air fall into the free goods category. Sometimes, the things we use don't come with a price tag. These are called free goods, resources that are available to everyone without any cost. Think of clean air or sunlight. They're abundant and don't require us to pay for access. In this case, the correct answer is C, free goods. Understanding this helps us see how some resources differ from those we have to buy or trade for. Let's talk about the idea that consumers hold the reins when it comes to what gets made and how much of it. This concept goes by several names: consumer freedom, consumer sovereignty, consumer power, and market mechanism. At its core, it means that the choices we make as buyers directly shape the products and services available in the market. It's a fundamental principle in economics, showing how demand drives supply. Which term do you think best captures this idea? Consumer sovereignty is all about power, the power of consumers to shape what gets made. In this system, it's the preferences and choices of consumers that steer production decisions. When people want something, producers respond. When they don't, products fade away. It's a simple idea, but it puts consumers right at the center of the economic stage. This concept helps us understand how markets stay responsive and dynamic. Let's talk about where the law of diminishing returns applies. Is it just agriculture? Or does it extend to industry, mining, or even all fields of production? This question challenges us to think beyond the traditional view. The law suggests that after a certain point, adding more input yields progressively smaller increases in output. But does this principle hold true only in farming, or is it a broader concept that affects many areas of production? We'll explore that next. Modern economics teaches us that pouring more and more resources into any production process won't always yield better results. At some point, adding extra input actually causes the output to grow more slowly or even shrink. This idea applies across the board, in all fields of production. It's a reminder that more isn't always better, and efficiency often depends on finding the right balance. Let's talk inflation and aggregate supply. Inflation happens when the total supply of goods and services in the economy doesn't keep up with the total demand. So, if aggregate supply is less than aggregate demand, prices tend to rise. That's inflation. When supply matches demand, prices stay stable. And if supply exceeds demand, prices might even fall. Understanding this balance is key to grasping how inflation works. When demand outpaces the available supply, prices start to climb. This is what we call inflation. It happens because there's more competition for fewer goods or services. In this case, the quantity supplied is less than the total demand in the market. That imbalance pushes prices upward, affecting everything from everyday items to big investments. Understanding this helps us see why inflation can spike when supply can't keep up. Let's look at some key strategies for economic collaboration and transition. Inviting foreign companies brings new players into the market. Private investment in public sector units helps modernize and grow these enterprises. Establishing joint enterprises means partnering across borders or sectors. And voluntary retirement programs, often called the golden handshake, encourage experienced employees to leave on good terms, making way for fresh talent. This question asks which of these is linked to that scheme. This slide explains a specific type of offer companies make to employees, usually during times of change or restructuring. It's called voluntary retirement. Essentially, it's a package or clause given to employees who choose to retire early, rather than being laid off or staying on. This option helps both the company and the employee find a smoother transition. It's an important concept when we talk about workforce management and organizational change. Let's consider how a reduction in the bank rate might impact credit availability. Will it make credit more expensive, or perhaps decrease its availability? Could it increase availability instead, or maybe have no effect at all? This question challenges us to think about the relationship between central bank policies and the flow of credit in the economy. Understanding this helps us grasp how monetary policy influences borrowing and lending decisions. When the bank rate goes down, borrowing costs for commercial banks drop too. That means banks can borrow money more cheaply, and as a result, they're able to lend more to businesses and individuals. So, a lower bank rate usually leads to an increase in the availability of credit for the public. It's a key tool for encouraging spending and investment in the economy. Let's talk about Gresham's law in economics. It's all about how money moves through an economy, from production to consumption, distribution, and circulation. The law highlights a key idea. When there are two forms of currency in use, the bad money tends to drive out the good money. So, understanding these stages helps us see why certain types of currency disappear from circulation while others stick around. It's a fascinating insight into how money behaves in the real world. Gresham's law is a simple but powerful idea in economics. It tells us that when two forms of money are in use, the bad money, the one with less value or lower quality, tends to push the good money out of circulation. People hold on to the better money and spend the worse. So, this law is really about how currency moves and circulates within an economy. Understanding this helps us see why certain types of money disappear from everyday use. Let's look at the different tools governments and central banks use to influence the economy. Fiscal policy involves government spending and taxation. Monetary policy focuses on managing interest rates and money supply. Trade policy deals with tariffs and international trade rules. Direct control refers to regulations or interventions in specific markets. So, when we talk about interest rate policy, we're really diving into monetary policy, the way central banks steer the economy through borrowing costs. Let's talk about monetary policy, the tool the Reserve Bank of India uses to keep the economy balanced. By adjusting interest rates, the RBI controls how much money is flowing through the system. Raise rates, and borrowing slows down, cooling inflation. Lower them, and spending picks up, boosting growth. It's a delicate dance, but this is how monetary policy steers the economy towards stability. Let's take a moment to unpack what green GNP really emphasizes. It's not just about rapid industrialization or agricultural growth. Those are important, but they don't capture the full picture. Instead, green GNP focuses on sustainable development, balancing economic progress with environmental care. It's about generating higher tax revenue in ways that don't compromise our planet's future. In other words, it's a measure that values growth, but not at any cost. Green GNP goes beyond just economic output. It measures agricultural growth while keeping a close eye on sustainable development and environmental health. So, it's not just about how much we produce, but how we do it, making sure our progress doesn't come at the planet's expense. This approach helps us balance growth with responsibility, ensuring long-term well-being for both people and nature. When a currency is devalued, it affects a country's trade and payments in several ways. Typically, devaluation makes exports cheaper and more competitive abroad, which can boost export volumes. At the same time, imports become more expensive, often reducing the amount imported. Ideally, this shift improves the balance of payments by increasing export earnings and decreasing import spending. So, the key outcome we're looking at is increased exports and an improved balance of payments. When a country makes its own currency cheaper, it becomes more attractive for other nations to buy its exports. This boost in exports brings in more revenue, which helps improve the country's balance of payment. In simple terms, cheaper currency encourages trade by making goods more affordable abroad, leading to a healthier economic position overall. That's why increased exports often go hand in hand with a better balance of payment. Value-added tax, or VAT, is a single tax system that replaced several state-level taxes. These include income tax, surcharges and turnover taxes, custom duties, and wealth taxes. By consolidating these into one, VAT simplifies the tax structure, making it easier to manage and comply with. This slide helps us understand which taxes were combined under VAT, highlighting its role in streamlining state taxation. VAT was created to make the tax system simpler. Instead of juggling multiple state-level surcharges and turnover taxes, it replaces them with one streamlined approach. This means fewer layers of taxation to manage, which helps businesses and governments alike. By cutting through the complexity, VAT aims to bring clarity and efficiency to how taxes are collected and paid. Let's take a moment to clarify some key terms in international economics. When we talk about the difference between visible exports and visible imports, we're referring to the balance of trade. It's a measure of the value of goods a country sells abroad versus what it buys from other countries. This is different from the balance of payments, which covers all transactions, and the terms of trade, which focus on price ratios. Understanding this distinction helps us grasp how countries interact through trade. Let's talk about the balance of trade, or BOT. This concept zeroes in on the exchange of physical goods between countries, what's exported and what's imported. It's a key part of understanding a nation's economic health. When exports exceed imports, the balance is positive. When imports are higher, it's negative. This slide highlights that focus: tangible goods, not services or other financial flows. It's a foundational idea in trade economics. Let's think about what happens to real wages when the overall price level in an economy goes up. Real wages measure how much purchasing power a worker's pay actually has, after accounting for inflation. So, if prices increase but wages don't keep pace, real wages effectively decrease. That means workers can buy less with the same nominal wage. The key idea here is that rising prices tend to reduce real wages unless wages themselves increase at the same or a higher rate. When prices go up, or inflation kicks in, the money we earn doesn't stretch as far as it used to. Even if your wage stays the same, its real value, what you can actually buy with it, goes down. So the purchasing power of a fixed wage decreases as inflation rises. It's a simple but important concept to understand when we talk about income and cost of living. Let's talk about when a firm reaches equilibrium. There are a few key conditions to consider. One is when marginal cost equals marginal revenue, That's often the critical point. Another is when total revenue hits its maximum, or when total cost is at its lowest. Sometimes, average revenue equals marginal revenue, but the real question is, which of these signals that the firm is truly in equilibrium? Understanding this helps us see how firms make optimal decisions. Let's talk about equilibrium in simple terms. It's the exact point where the cost of making one more unit, that's the marginal cost, matches the revenue you get from selling that unit, which is the marginal revenue. When these two are equal, you've found your sweet spot. Producing beyond this point means costs outweigh benefits, and producing less means you're missing out on profit. This balance is key to smart decision-making in business. Here, we're looking at a question about data collection for India's unorganized sector. The slide lists 4 organizations: NSSO, CSO, ASI, and RBI. Our focus is on identifying which one actually gathers data on this vast, informal part of the economy. Understanding who collects this information helps us grasp how policymakers track and support workers outside the formal system. Let's explore which organization plays that crucial role. The National Sample Survey Organization, or NSSO, plays a crucial role in gathering data about households and the unorganized sector. This data helps us understand the realities of everyday life for millions of people, especially those working outside the formal economy. By collecting this information, the NSSO provides the foundation for informed decisions and policies that can improve lives across the country. Let's talk about the institutions that oversee scheduled banks in India. The question here is, who must these banks be registered with? Is it SEBI, RBI, the Finance Ministry, or SBI? The key point is that scheduled banks are required to register with the Reserve Bank of India, the RBI. This ensures they meet certain criteria and operate under regulatory supervision. It's a crucial part of maintaining stability in the banking system. Scheduled banks are banks listed in the second schedule of the Reserve Bank of India Act. This designation means they meet certain criteria set by the RBI, like having a minimum paid-up capital and reserves. Being a scheduled bank gives them certain privileges, including access to RBI's financial support and membership in clearinghouses. This slide helps us understand the regulatory framework behind these banks and why the RBI plays a central role. Let's take a moment to think about different financial instruments and how they relate to national debt. We have life insurance policies, long-term government bonds, national savings certificates, and provident funds. The question here is, which one of these is not considered part of the national debt? It's a subtle distinction, but an important one, especially when we're looking at how governments manage their finances over time. Life insurance is a private agreement between individuals, not a public debt. It often comes with tax advantages, making it a valuable financial tool. Unlike government obligations, these policies are personal contracts designed to provide security and peace of mind for families. Understanding this distinction helps us see why life insurance plays a unique role in financial planning. Let's talk about a country's balance of trade. When is it considered unfavorable? The balance of trade compares exports and imports. If exports exceed imports, that's generally positive. If imports exceed exports, it means the country is buying more from abroad than it's selling, which can be unfavorable. When exports and imports are equal, the balance is neutral. And finally, there's no trade at all. So, the key point is that an unfavorable balance happens when imports exceed exports. When a country has an unfavorable balance, it means it's spending more money on importing goods than it's earning from exports. In other words, the value of what's coming in is greater than what's going out. This situation can affect the economy in several ways, from currency value to trade policies. So, the key takeaway here is that imports exceed exports when the balance is unfavorable. Let's look at how we track a country's financial interactions with the world. The question asks for the name of the annual record that captures all monetary transactions between a country and other nations. We have 4 options: balance of trade, balance of monetary receipts, balance of payments, and balance sheet. Each term relates to finance, but only one covers the full scope of international money flows over a year. This is the key to understanding a country's economic position globally. The balance of payments, or BOP, is like a detailed ledger that tracks every financial transaction between a country and the rest of the world. It records money flowing in and out, from trade, investments, loans, and more. Understanding the BOP helps us see how a country interacts economically on the global stage, showing whether it's a net lender or borrower, and revealing its overall financial health. Here's a quick quiz for us, who suggested a tax on expenditure. We've got 4 names to consider: Dalton, Caldor, Musgrave, and Gautam Mathur. Each has contributed to economic thought in different ways, but only one proposed this specific idea. Let's think about their work and see which name fits best with the concept of taxing what people spend, rather than what they earn or own. Nicholas Caldor had an interesting idea about taxation. Instead of just taxing people on their income, he suggested we should also look at what they actually spend. The idea is that spending reflects a person's real economic activity, not just their earnings on paper. This approach could change how we think about fairness and efficiency in taxes. It's a shift from focusing solely on income to considering consumption as well. Let's focus on a quick geography quiz about major financial hubs. The question asks where Dalal Street is located. The options are New York, Delhi, Pune, and Mumbai. Dalal Street is famously known as the heart of India's financial markets. So, the correct answer here is Mumbai, the city that hosts the Bombay Stock Exchange and drives much of the country's economic activity. We're looking at Mumbai, a city known for its vibrant energy and financial significance. The word Dalal means broker in Marathi, the local language here. Mumbai is also home to the Bombay Stock Exchange, one of the oldest and busiest stock exchanges in Asia. It's a place where commerce and culture come together, shaping much of India's economic story. This slide highlights why Mumbai is the correct answer in this context. Let's talk about product differentiation. That's when products are similar but not identical, and each has unique features or branding. This is a key characteristic of monopolistic competition. Unlike perfect competition, where products are identical, here businesses compete by making their offerings stand out. So, when you see product differentiation, you're usually looking at a market with many sellers, each trying to carve out their own niche. That's monopolistic competition in action. In monopolistic competition, we see many sellers offering products that are similar, but each one is branded or slightly different. Think about toothpaste, lots of options, but each brand tries to stand out with its own twist. This setup means companies compete not just on price, but on features, quality, or marketing. It's a crowded market, but with room for variety. This is the essence of monopolistic competition. Let's take a moment to think about the Nifty. Which index is it linked to? Is it the Cloth Market Price Index, the Consumer Price Index, the BSE Index, or the NSE Index? This question helps us pinpoint where Nifty fits in the larger financial landscape. Understanding this connection is key to grasping how market movements are tracked and interpreted. So, which one do you think it is? The Nifty 50 is a key benchmark in the Indian stock market. It represents the top 50 companies listed on the National Stock Exchange, or NSE. These companies are chosen based on their market capitalization and liquidity, making the Nifty 50 a reliable indicator of the overall market performance. When we talk about the Nifty 50, we're really referring to an NSE index that captures the health of the economy through its leading businesses. Let's talk about the break-even point. This is where a business covers all its costs and starts to make a profit. It's not just about total revenue matching total cost, that's part of it. But more precisely, it's where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. At this point, every additional unit sold adds exactly as much revenue as it costs to produce, maximizing profit potential. Understanding this helps us know when a business moves from loss to gain. Here, we're looking at the point where a business neither makes a profit nor suffers a loss. This is the break-even point, where total revenue exactly matches total cost. It's a crucial milestone because it tells us the minimum sales needed to cover all expenses. Beyond this point, the business starts generating profit. Understanding this balance helps us make smarter financial decisions and plan for growth. Let's talk about the different market terms used to describe investor expectations. When a sharebroker sells shares expecting prices to fall soon, they're taking a specific position. This action is tied to the idea of a bear market, where prices are expected to drop. So the correct term here is a bear, not a bull, bison, or stag. Understanding these labels helps us grasp how traders anticipate market movements. When it comes to market sentiment, we often hear about bears and bulls. Bears expect prices to fall, they're looking down, cautious, maybe even pessimistic. Bulls, on the other hand, look up, optimistic, expecting prices to rise. So, if someone's expecting a drop, they're called a bear. It's a simple way to remember who's betting on what in the market. Let's talk about the money market. What exactly is it? Well, it's a market primarily for short-term funds. That means money that's borrowed or lent for a brief period, usually less than a year. It's not about selling shares or long-term investments. Instead, it deals with negotiable instruments like treasury bills or commercial paper, which are quick, liquid, and low risk. So when you hear money market, think short-term funds moving efficiently between institutions. The money market is all about short-term funds. It handles debt instruments that are highly liquid, meaning they can be quickly converted to cash. These instruments have maturities of 1 year or less, making them ideal for managing immediate financial needs. So, when we talk about the money market, we're really focusing on the flow of short-term money, fast, flexible, and ready to move. Let's look at a quick quiz about different types of taxes. We have sales tax, octroi, income tax, and import duty. The question is, which one of these taxes doesn't actually cause the price of a commodity to go up? Think about how each tax affects the cost chain. Some taxes get passed on to the buyer, while others don't directly impact the price you pay. This question helps us understand the subtle ways taxes influence prices in the market. Let's clarify how income tax works in this context. Income tax is paid on personal earnings. It's a charge on what individuals make, not on the products they create or sell. That means it doesn't get added to the cost of producing something, nor does it affect the price you pay at the store. So when we talk about taxes included in production costs, income tax isn't one of them. It's strictly a tax on personal income. Let's talk about legal tender money. What exactly does this term mean? Legal tender refers to the money that must be accepted if offered in payment of a debt. It's the official currency recognized by law for settling transactions. On this slide, we see different financial instruments like checks, drafts, bills of exchange, and currency notes. But only one of these qualifies as legal tender. The question is, which one? Currency notes are what the law recognizes as the official way to settle debts. When you owe someone money, it's these notes that count as legal payment. This means they're accepted everywhere for transactions, making them a fundamental part of our financial system. Understanding this helps us see why currency notes hold such an important role in everyday commerce. Let's talk about what a seller's market really means. It's a situation where demand exceeds supply, more buyers than available goods. That imbalance pushes prices up, giving sellers the advantage. It's not when supply and demand are balanced, or when supply exceeds demand. And it's definitely not just about competitive rates. Understanding this helps us see how markets shift and why timing matters so much in buying or selling. When there's a shortage of goods, that means demand is higher than supply. The seller holds the upper hand. They get to set the price because buyers are competing for limited products. This situation shifts power toward the seller, giving them the ability to dictate terms. So, whenever demand exceeds supply, expect prices to rise and sellers to call the shots. When we talk about dear money, we're referring to money that's expensive to borrow. So, which interest rate fits that idea? It's the high rate of interest. That's when borrowing costs are steep, making money less accessible. On the other hand, low or zero rates mean money is cheaper and easier to get. Fixed rates just mean the cost stays the same over time. So, dear money really points to borrowing with a high interest rate. Let's talk about dear money. It's basically the opposite of cheap money. It happens when borrowing costs are high. That means interest rates are steep, making loans more expensive to take on. So, when you hear dear money, think high interest rates. It's a key concept for understanding how borrowing affects the economy and personal finances alike. Let's talk about the concept of the lender of the last resort in India. This term refers to the institution that steps in to provide emergency funding when other sources dry up. The options here include IDBI, the Finance Ministry, RBI, and SBI. Understanding which one plays this critical role helps us grasp how financial stability is maintained during crises. The answer is the Reserve Bank of India, or RBI, the ultimate backstop for liquidity in the country's banking system. When all other lending options run dry, the Reserve Bank of India steps in. It provides liquidity, either to the government or to commercial banks. This role is crucial because it keeps the financial system stable, ensuring that funds keep flowing even in tough times. So when you hear about emergency lending or last resort borrowing, it's the RBI that's usually behind the scenes, ready to support the economy. Let's break down what the repo rate really means. It's the interest rate at which commercial banks borrow money from the Reserve Bank of India, using government securities as collateral. This rate influences how much it costs banks to get short-term funds, which then affects lending rates for the public. So, the repo rate plays a key role in controlling liquidity and inflation in the economy. Understanding this helps us see the bigger picture of monetary policy at work. Let's clarify how the repo rate works. Unlike the general bank rate, the repo rate is all about borrowing money with a safety net, that safety net being government securities as collateral. In other words, commercial banks borrow funds from the Reserve Bank of India, but they do so by pledging these government securities. This mechanism helps control liquidity while keeping the system secure. It's a key tool in monetary policy, and understanding it helps us see how central banks influence the economy. Let's talk about what defines a closed economy. It's an economy that doesn't trade with other countries, no imports, no exports. It's completely self-contained. Now, being closed doesn't necessarily mean it has no coastline or no international transport, and it doesn't depend on whether it's a member of the UN. The key point is the absence of trade with the outside world. That's what makes an economy truly closed. A closed economy is one that's completely self-sufficient. It doesn't rely on trading with other countries, no imports, no exports. Everything it needs is produced and consumed within its own borders. This means it doesn't engage in any international trade at all. So, when we say a closed economy, we're talking about a system that operates independently from the global market. Let's break down the difference between GNP and NNP. It comes down to capital depreciation. That's option D. GNP, or gross national product, measures the total value of goods and services produced, but it doesn't account for the wear and tear on capital assets. NNP, or net national product, subtracts this depreciation. So the gap between GNP and NNP equals the value lost through capital depreciation. It's a key concept in understanding national income accounting. When we talk about moving from a gross figure to a net figure, the key step is subtracting depreciation. Depreciation is basically the wear and tear on capital assets over time. It's what reduces the value of those assets as they get used up. So, to find the net figure, we take the gross amount and subtract this capital depreciation. That's the essential adjustment that gives us a clearer picture of true value. Let's talk about the basic building blocks of business assets. When we mention raw materials, components, and finished goods, what are we really referring to? These items make up what's called inventory. It's the stock a business holds to sell or use in production. Understanding this term helps us see how companies manage their resources and keep operations running smoothly. So the answer here is inventory, the essential goods that keep business moving forward. Inventory is all about the stock a business keeps on hand, goods and materials that haven't been sold yet. It's what a company holds before those items reach customers. Managing inventory well means balancing enough supply without overstocking. In this case, the correct answer points us directly to inventory as the key concept we're focusing on. Let's take a look at different forms of money and reserves. This question asks us to identify what special drawing rights, or SDRs, are also called. The options range from virtual gold to paper gold, plastic money, and silver gold. Each term reflects a different way of thinking about value and currency in the global financial system. Understanding SDRs helps us grasp how international reserves work beyond traditional money. Let's talk about special drawing rights, or SDRs. These are international reserve assets created by the IMF. People often call them paper gold because they're highly liquid, easy to exchange and use among member countries. Think of SDRs as a kind of financial safety net, a reserve that countries can tap into when needed. They're not physical gold, but their value and flexibility make them just as valuable in global finance. Let's look at what happens to total utility when marginal utility hits zero. Marginal utility measures the extra satisfaction from consuming one more unit of something. When it drops to zero, it means adding more doesn't increase total utility anymore. So, at that point, total utility reaches its maximum. It's like the peak of the curve. Beyond this, total utility won't go any higher. This concept helps us understand consumer behavior and how satisfaction changes with consumption. When you reach complete satisfaction, what we call mu equals zero, eating or consuming more won't make you any happier. At this point, your total utility, or TU, has hit its highest level. This means you've maximized your satisfaction. Any extra consumption beyond this won't add value because you're already at your peak. So the correct answer here is C, maximum. Let's talk about where the law of diminishing returns applies. It's a concept that shows up in many areas: agriculture, industry, mining, and all fields of production. The idea is that after a certain point, adding more input doesn't lead to proportional increases in output. So, whether we're farming crops, running factories, or extracting minerals, this law helps us understand when extra effort starts to pay off less and less. It's a key principle in economics and resource management. This slide introduces a fundamental law in production. It tells us that when we keep adding more of one input, like labor or materials, there comes a point where the extra output we get starts to shrink. This principle applies across all areas of production, no matter the industry or process. Understanding this helps us make smarter decisions about resource allocation and efficiency. It's a key concept that shapes how we think about growth and limits in any productive system. When we talk about USB in marketing, we're referring to a concept that sets a product or service apart from the competition. It's about what makes it unique, something that grabs attention and convinces customers to choose it. The question here asks us to identify what USB stands for, highlighting options that sound similar but mean very different things. Understanding this term is key to crafting a strong marketing message. A USB, or unique selling proposition, is what sets a product apart from the rest. It's the specific feature that makes it different and better than the competition. When we understand a product's USB, we see exactly why customers would choose it over others. It's the key to standing out in a crowded market. Structural unemployment can stem from several deep-rooted issues. It might be caused by deflationary conditions, where falling prices reduce demand and jobs, or a shortage of raw materials, which slows down production. Sometimes, it's a mismatch between the skills workers have and what industries need. And often, heavy industry bias when economies rely too much on declining sectors. Understanding these causes helps us tackle unemployment more effectively. Structural unemployment happens when workers' skills don't match what employers need. It's not about a lack of jobs, but about a gap between the abilities people have and the abilities businesses require. This mismatch can slow down the economy, because even when jobs are available, they can't be filled effectively. So, the key issue here is inadequate productive capacity, or simply put, a skill mismatch. Understanding this helps us see why some unemployment sticks around longer than others. Let's focus on the Phillips curve. This curve shows the inverse relationship between unemployment and inflation, meaning, as unemployment falls, inflation tends to rise, and vice versa. It's a key concept in macroeconomics, helping us understand the trade-offs policymakers face. The other curves on the slide represent different economic ideas, but the Phillips curve is the one that captures this specific connection between unemployment and inflation. The Phillips curve is a key idea in economics that links two important things: unemployment and inflation. It suggests that when unemployment is low, inflation tends to be high. And when unemployment rises, inflation usually falls. This relationship helps policymakers understand the trade-offs they face when trying to balance economic growth with price stability. It's a classic concept that still shapes how we think about the economy today. Let's take a moment to consider a key turning point in India's population history. This slide asks us to identify the year of the Great Divide, a moment when population trends shifted significantly. The options range from 1904 to 1951. Understanding this year helps us grasp how demographic changes have shaped India's development over time. It's a crucial piece of the puzzle in population studies and historical analysis. 1921 marks a significant turning point in India's history, often called the Year of Great Divide. It's when the population started to grow steadily and rapidly, shifting the country's demographic landscape. This moment sets the stage for understanding how social and economic changes unfolded in the decades that followed. Recognizing this year helps us grasp the scale and pace of India's transformation in the 20th century. Operation Blackboard focuses on improving education where it's needed most. It aims to provide primary education in backward areas, reaching children who might otherwise be left behind. It also works to open new schools for girls, ensuring equal access. The initiative provides essential teaching-learning aids, so classrooms have what they need. And importantly, it offers education to slum dwellers, bringing opportunity to some of the most underserved communities. This is education with purpose, targeted and inclusive. Our main goal was simple but crucial, making sure schools had the basic tools and materials they needed to teach effectively. It wasn't about fancy equipment or advanced technology. Instead, we focused on providing the minimum essential teaching and learning aids. These are the building blocks that make education possible, helping teachers and students engage in the learning process from day one. Now, let's look at the accounting year of the Reserve Bank of India. The question gives us 4 options, from April to March, July to June, January to December, and August to July. Understanding the RBI's accounting year helps us grasp how they organize their financial reporting and planning. It's a key detail for anyone studying Indian banking or finance. Keep this in mind as we move forward. Here, we see a key difference in financial reporting periods. While most commercial banks follow the April to March cycle, the Reserve Bank of India operates from July to June. This shift gives the RBI extra time to gather and analyze reports from other banks. It's a practical choice, ensuring they have the full picture before making decisions. So when asked, the correct answer is July to June. Here's a quick quiz to test what we know about Indian currency. The question asks, whose signature appears on the 1 rupee note? Is it the Prime Minister, the President, the Finance Minister, or the Finance Secretary? This is a small detail, but it tells us a lot about authority and responsibility in the government's financial system. Let's keep this in mind as we explore how currency reflects the structure of power. Here's an interesting detail about the 1 note. Unlike other currency notes issued by the Reserve Bank of India, this particular note is issued directly by the Government of India. That means it carries the signature of the Finance Secretary, not the RBI Governor. So, when you see a 1 note, remember, it's the Finance Secretary's signature you're looking at. This distinction is important for understanding how different parts of the government handle currency issuance. Let's look at a key moment in history, the launch of the famous slogan, Garibai Hatao, which means eradicate poverty. The question here asks during which 5-year plan this slogan was introduced. The options range from the 1st to the 7th plan. This slogan marked a significant shift in policy focus, aiming directly at reducing poverty across the nation. Understanding when it was launched helps us grasp the priorities of that era. This slogan was introduced by Indira Gandhi during the 4th 5-year plan, which ran from 1969 to 1974. It marked a significant period in India's development strategy, focusing on growth and self-reliance. Understanding when this slogan came into use helps us connect the ideas behind it to the broader goals of that era. So the correct answer here is the 4th 5-year plan. Let's look at a quick quiz question about the 10 note. How many languages do you think appear on it? The options range from 1 to 17. It might surprise you that Indian currency features multiple languages, a reflection of the country's rich linguistic diversity. This question helps us appreciate how language and culture come together in everyday objects, like money. So, what's your guess? We're looking at a total of 17 languages here. That includes the 15 languages you see on the language panel, plus Hindi and English. It's important to keep track of all these options, especially when we're aiming for broad accessibility. So, the correct answer in this case is D, 17 languages altogether. Let's look at where the special paper for printing currency notes is made. This question gives us 4 options: Hyderabad, Kolkata, Hoshangabad, and Duas. Each city has its own unique industries and specialties, but only one is known for producing this crucial material. Understanding this helps us appreciate the behind-the-scenes work that keeps currency secure and reliable. So, which city do you think it is? Let's focus on the location of the security paper mill for currency. It's based in Hoshangabad. This detail is important because it ties directly to the production of the materials used in printing currency notes. Knowing this helps us understand the broader system behind currency security and the measures taken to prevent counterfeiting. So, the correct answer here is Hoshangabad. Let's talk about the term Hindu rate of growth. It's a phrase used to describe a period of slow economic growth in India. But who actually coined this term? The options here include Montek Singh Ahluwalia, Raj Krishna, K.S. Parekh, and A.K. Sen. This question challenges us to recall the economist who first identified and named this specific growth pattern. It's a key piece of economic history that shapes how we understand India's development. Let's talk about a term coined by Raj Krishna. He used it to describe the slow growth of the Indian economy, especially when compared to other Asian countries. This idea helps us understand why India's progress seemed to lag behind its neighbors for a time. It's a key concept when we look at economic development and growth patterns in the region. Recognizing this helps us frame the challenges India faced and the path it needed to take. Let's look at one of the oldest institutions in India's financial world, the stock exchanges. This question asks us to identify the oldest stock exchange in the country. Among the options, we have Hyderabad, Bangalore, Ahmedabad, and Bombay. The Bombay Stock Exchange, or BSE, holds the distinction of being the oldest. It's been a cornerstone of India's market for well over a century, shaping how trading happens even today. Let's take a moment to look at the Bombay Stock Exchange, or BSE. Founded way back in 1875, it holds the distinction of being the oldest stock exchange in the country. That long history has made it a cornerstone of India's financial markets, shaping how trading and investment have evolved over more than a century. Understanding the BSE gives us insight into the roots of modern finance here. Let's talk about something called green gold. It's a term that's used to describe a valuable natural resource, but which one exactly? Is it rice, gold, coffee, or bamboo? Each has its own importance, but green gold usually points to something renewable, something that grows and supports livelihoods sustainably. Think about what fits that description best. This question helps us explore the connection between nature and economy, a key theme in today's discussion. Bamboo is often called green gold, and for good reason. It's a fast-growing, sustainable resource that's incredibly versatile. From construction to textiles, bamboo offers eco-friendly alternatives that help reduce our environmental impact. This nickname highlights its value, both economically and environmentally, making it a powerful symbol of green innovation. Let's talk about a key figure in India's agricultural history, the father of the White Revolution. This revolution transformed India's dairy industry, making the country one of the largest milk producers in the world. The question here is, who led this incredible change? Was it Baba Amt, J.P. Narayan, M.S. Swaminathan, or V. Kurian? Think about the impact of each name and which one is most closely linked to this dairy revolution. Dr. Verghese Kurian is known as the architect behind Operation Flood, a groundbreaking initiative that transformed India's dairy industry. He's also the founder of Amul, a brand that became a symbol of cooperative success. His vision empowered millions of farmers and reshaped the way milk is produced and distributed across the country. This slide highlights his pivotal role in that journey. Let's take a moment to think about a key milestone in India's economic history. The question here asks, in which year was the first 5-year plan launched in India? This plan marked a major step in shaping the country's development strategy. We have 4 options to consider: 1947, 1950, 1951, and 1955. Think about the timeline just after independence and which year fits best with that early planning phase. As we wrap up, remember that India's first 5-year plan started in 1951, led by Jawaharlal Nehru. This plan marked a significant step in shaping the country's economic future. It set the foundation for development strategies that continue to influence India today. Thank you for joining me on this journey.